incident was nothing short of unbelievable. A beautiful young cop, stranded and alone, gets pregnant by a man old enough to be her father. What truly happened? This is the story of how their lives collided, beginning on a remote island. Officer Lucy Hayes, known for her sharp mind and bravery, was a part of a specialized Coast Guard patrol unit. Their mission, to secure a desolate and vast stretch of coastal water. Today, the patrol boat had stopped at a small, uninhabited island to refill their freshwater supply. The island was a breathtaking sight, with a pristine white sand beach meeting a dense, ancient forest. Lucy, feeling restless after hours on the boat, decided to take a short walk to stretch her legs. While the rest of the crew worked, she wandered a little way into the forest's edge, admiring the exotic foliage. The air was thick with the scent of salt water and damp earth. She felt a sense of peace that was rare for her demanding job. But that peace was shattered by the distant rumble of an engine. Her heart leaped into her throat as she peered through the trees. The patrol boat was slowly pulling away from the shore, its hull slicing through the gentle waves. "Wait! Hey! I'm still here!" she screamed, her voice hoarse from the sudden panic. She ran, her boots kicking up sand, her arms waving frantically, but it was no use. The boat moved steadily onward, a growing silhouette against the horizon, until it was just a tiny dot. Her mind raced. She reached for her radio, her fingers fumbling, only to find the battery was dead. Her cell phone was also useless. No signal, just a blank screen. She was truly alone. The sinking sun cast long shadows, painting the sky in fiery orange and purple hues. Fear, cold and sharp, began to creep into her heart. She was a trained officer, a survivor. But this was a different kind of danger. She had to find shelter for the night. She had to believe they would realize she was gone and come back for her. As she turned to look for a safe spot, a sound cut through the silence, the snapping of a twig, followed by the soft crunch of leaves. Every instinct in her body screamed for her to be alert. In one swift motion, she drew the folding knife from her belt. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. From the deep shadows of the forest, a figure emerged. It was an old man, his face weathered, and his eyes holding a depth that felt both weary and knowing. Lucy tensed. He looked like he belonged to the island, a ghost from its past. He said nothing at first, just watched her with an intense gaze. The silence stretched between them, thick with tension. She had faced armed criminals and dangerous situations before, but this was a completely unknown threat. Who was this man? And what was his story? "Who's there?" Lucy repeated, her voice steady and commanding. The old man remained silent for a moment, his eyes scanning her uniform, her face, and finally the knife in her hand. A faint, knowing smile touched his lips. "You don't need that," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. "I'm no threat to you. I've been alone here for a very long time." Lucy didn't lower her guard. "Who are you?" The man slowly walked toward a large, flat rock on the beach and sat down, gesturing for her to do the same. His movements were slow, but deliberate. He looked exhausted, as if he carried the weight of the island on his shoulders, yet his eyes were sharp, full of an unyielding resilience. "My name is John," he said, staring out at the vast expanse of the ocean. "I used to be a Marine, stationed in these waters more than 30 years ago." Lucy's mind immediately went to her training and the countless historical files she'd reviewed. "Captain John, there was a report. A unit went missing during a reconnaissance mission. You were all declared lost at sea." He nodded, a bitter sadness in his eyes. "That's me. My ship was hit by a rogue wave during a storm. I was the only one who survived, washed ashore here, with nothing but the clothes on my back. I waited. For days, then weeks, then months. No one ever came. I figured they'd given me up for dead." He paused, his gaze fixed on the waves. "And so, I became a ghost." Lucy slowly lowered her knife, her curiosity overpowering her caution. To survive here, alone, for decades. It was a feat of human endurance she couldn't comprehend. "How did you do it?" she asked soft. How have you survived all this time? This island has everything you need if you know where to look, John said, his tone matter of fact. I learned what plants were safe to eat, how to catch fish with my bare hands, how to find clean water. Survival isn't a choice here. It's the only option. A wave of exhaustion washed over Lucy. She sank onto the sand, her tension finally easing. She was still stranded, but she was no longer alone. My name's Lucy Hayes, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I'm an officer with the Coast Guard. My boat made a quick stop here to get water, and I fell behind. They didn't see me leave, and they left without me. John nodded. They'll realize you're missing. They'll come back for you. Lucy wanted to believe him. She desperately wanted to believe him. As the last light of day disappeared and the air grew colder, John stood up. Come on, he said, his voice kind. I have a place you can stay for the night. We can't have you catching a cold. She looked at him, a stranger who was a ghost from the past, her last hope for survival. Without a second thought, she followed him into the darkness of the forest, the path lit only by the faint glow of the stars. It was a leap of faith, an act of pure trust. They were two strangers, one lost in time and the other lost in place, about to begin a journey that would change their lives forever. The simple hut John led Lucy to was a testament to his 3 decades of survival. Woven from bamboo and tree branches, it was surprisingly sturdy and well-designed. Inside, the space was Spartan, but functional. A sleeping mat made of dried leaves, a gourd for holding the water, and a set of hand-carved tools. It's not much, but it keeps the rain and wind out, John said, his voice soft as he gestured to a small fireplace in the center. It's a different kind of life here. If you're staying for a while, you'll have to learn to live by its rules. The next morning, the new reality of their situation sank in. The sun rose, painting the sky in soft blues and golds. But there was no boat on the horizon. Lucy knew she couldn't just sit and wait. She had to learn. John was a patient teacher. He started with the basics. First, food, he said, leading her into the forest. He showed her which berries were edible and which were poisonous, how to tell a safe mushroom from a deadly one, and how to find fresh water from a hidden spring. He even taught her how to set simple traps for small animals and how to create a rudimentary fishing spear from a sturdy branch and a sharpened rock. Lucy, a city girl and a trained officer, found herself humbled by the sheer amount of knowledge John possessed. She was used to technology, to guns and gadgets, but here her life depended on ancient, raw skills. She learned to start a fire by rubbing 2 sticks together, her hands blistering at first, then toughening. She learned to read the forest, to track animal prints in the mud, and to listen to the sounds of nature as if it were a language. Days blurred into weeks, and weeks into months. They worked together, side by side. He taught her to repair the hut, to gather firewood, and to find the best spots for fishing. Their conversations, which had been short and practical at first, began to lengthen. At night, by the warmth of the fire, Lucy would talk about her life, her family, the daily grind of police work, her hopes and dreams. John, in turn, began to open up about his past, sharing stories of his life as a young Marine, the friendships he'd lost, and the overwhelming loneliness of his decades on the island. As they shared their deepest fears and regrets, the quiet moments between them became more comfortable, more intimate. The isolation of the island stripped away all the usual barriers between them: age, social status, their different lives. All that mattered was the present moment, the daily struggle for survival, and the unexpected bond that was forming between them. Without realizing it, their reliance on each other had turned into something deeper. The initial fear was replaced by trust, and the desperate need for companionship had blossomed into a quiet, undeniable affection. They were no longer just 2 people stranded on an island. They were a team, a family, and their shared future was about to become far more complicated than either of them could have ever imagined. As the weeks turned into months, life on the island fell into a comfortable rhythm. Lucy and John were a well-oiled machine. They knew each other's every move, every subtle gesture. They would spend their days hunting, foraging, and improving their small camp, their nights talking by the campfire under a blanket of stars. The quiet, isolated life stripped away all pretenses. They saw each other not for their titles, a young police officer and a retired Marine captain, but as two human beings, flawed and resilient. The age difference, which seemed so vast at first, faded into irrelevance. All that mattered was the present moment and the shared struggle to survive. Their bond grew from simple companionship to a deep, unspoken affection. In the profound silence of the island, a different kind of communication took root, one of gentle touches, shared glances, and a sense of absolute trust. One night, as the fire crackled between them, John looked at Lucy, his eyes filled with the tenderness she hadn't seen before. "I never thought I'd find happiness again," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "This place was my prison for so long, but now, with you here, it feels like home." Lucy smiled, her hand gently resting on his. "I feel the same. I was terrified at first, but now, I wouldn't trade this for anything." In the solitude of the island, where the only laws were those of nature, they found a connection that transcended all logic and reason. They were simply two people who needed each other, who had found a haven in the most unlikely of circumstances. The quiet moments of companionship turned into something more, a love that grew from shared experience and mutual respect. Several months later, Lucy began to notice subtle changes in her body, a strange fatigue that lingered despite getting enough rest, a sudden aversion to the smell of certain foods, a persistent feeling of nausea in the mornings. At first, she dismissed it as a reaction to the island's diet or just simple exhaustion, but as the days passed, a new, undeniable possibility crept into her mind. Her stomach felt different, a soft fullness she hadn't noticed before. Her hands trembled as she placed them on her lower abdomen, a wave of shock and disbelief washing over her. Could it be? Here, on this island, with no one but John? The thought was overwhelming, a mix of pure joy and absolute terror. A new life was growing inside her, a living testament to their time together. She was pregnant. The realization brought a rush of emotion. She was happy, deeply, unexpectedly happy, but her joy was mixed with an immense fear. How could she give birth here, with no doctor, no hospital, and no medical supplies? The simple fact of their survival was a miracle, but bringing a new life into this world felt like an impossible risk. She had to tell John. She had to share this secret that was now a part of her. The reunion was a whirlwind of emotion. The Coast Guard crew couldn't believe their eyes. Here was Officer Lucy Hayes, who had been presumed lost at sea, standing on the beach with a gray-haired man who was a legend, Captain John, a hero declared dead decades ago. The story of their survival was almost unbelievable. As Lucy was helped onto the boat, she held John's hand tightly. The journey back to the city was filled with questions, and for the first time in over a year, they had to recount their incredible story to a bewildered audience. Back in the city, life was waiting for them, but it was a life they had to completely rebuild. Lucy was hailed as a hero. After a thorough medical checkup, her pregnancy was confirmed. The news spread quickly through the department, a mix of shock and awe following her wherever she went. She decided to continue her work, balancing her duties as a police officer with the new life growing inside her. John, now officially a ghost no more, chose a quieter path. The chaos of city life was a stark contrast to the peaceful isolation of the island. He found solace in nature, taking a job as a park groundskeeper in a quiet green corner of the city. He spent his days tending to plants, the skills he learned on the island now put to use in a new, calmer way. He was no longer a soldier or a castaway, but a gentle caretaker, patiently waiting for the day his son would be born. Months later, in a sterile hospital room, a new chapter began. Lucy gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The first cry of their child was the most beautiful sound they had ever heard. As Lucy held their son for the first time, John stood by her side, his eyes filled with tears of pure joy. He gently touched the baby's tiny hand. "He's amazing, Lucy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "He's everything." They named their son Caleb, a name that means wholehearted. Their journey, which began with a series of misfortunes on a deserted island, had led them to this moment. They were no longer two lonely individuals who were lost in their own ways. They were a family, bound not by fate, but by love. Their story became a legend. It was a tale of resilience, of love that defies age and circumstance, and of hope found in the most desperate of places. Lucy and John showed that life's most unexpected twists can lead to its greatest blessings. Their island, once a prison, was now a sacred memory, a place where they not only survived but also found true happiness, a happiness that they now shared with their son, Caleb, the beautiful result of their extraordinary life together. Incident was nothing short of unbelievable. A beautiful young cop, stranded and alone, gets pregnant by a man old enough to be her father. What truly happened? This is the story of how their lives collided, beginning on a remote island. Officer Lucy Hayes, known for her sharp mind and bravery, was a part of a specialized Coast Guard patrol unit. Their mission, to secure a desolate and vast stretch of coastal water. Today, the patrol boat had stopped at a small, uninhabited island to refill their freshwater supply. The island was a breathtaking sight, with a pristine white sand beach meeting a dense, ancient forest. Lucy, feeling restless after hours on the boat,